It was a pitch-black, stormy night on a forgotten back road in rural Texas, where the asphalt seemed to stretch into nowhere, and the sky was a heavy sheet of lead. The rain was coming down with terrifying violence, turning the road into a slick, black river that was dangerous for anyone to cross. In the middle of this apocalyptic scene, lit only by the lightning tearing through the horizon, lay a motionless figure. It wasn't debris, nor a lost object, but a living, breathing soul fighting for every breath. Right there in the heart of nowhere, a once majestic golden retriever was reduced to a soaked pile of fur and pain, huddled against the biting cold that pierced right through to her bones. The poor creature, who we'll call Daisy, was living through the worst nightmare an animal can face, total abandonment in her hour of greatest need. Her body shook violently, not just from the freezing storm, but from the shock of a devastating physical trauma. Her rear leg was visibly dislocated, twisted at a gruesome, unnatural angle, a cruel testament to a car impact that didn't even bother to stop. The pain was excruciating, a liquid fire running up her spine every time she shifted her weight, but she made no sound, saving every ounce of energy for a mission far more important than her own survival. Daisy wasn't alone in that hell of water and wind. Beneath her wounded, trembling body, she was hiding her most precious treasure. She was a desperate mother, acting as a living shield for her 6 puppies, born just 2 weeks ago, tiny and defenseless against the fury of the elements. She had dragged them out of a soggy cardboard box, tossed in the ditch like trash, bringing them onto the asphalt in the insane hope of being seen. Every semi-truck that roared past inches from her nose was a threat of instant death, yet she didn't flinch. Her sweet eyes, now clouded with suffering, stared into the darkness, begging for mercy, asking the heavens for a miracle that seemed like it would never come. The cruelty of whoever left her there was an invisible monster hanging in the air, colder than the rain itself. Imagine the heart of stone required to look into those trusting eyes and decide to dump them like garbage on the side of a deserted highway, condemning them to a slow, agonizing death. Daisy felt life slipping away, her breathing becoming shallower as hypothermia began to claim her exhausted body. But her maternal instinct was stronger than death. She kept licking the heads of her babies, trying to pass on what little warmth remained in her broken frame, whispering a silent promise of protection she knew she couldn't keep for much longer. Just when Daisy was about to close her eyes for the last time, surrendering to her cruel fate, 2 powerful headlights cut through the darkness like blades of light. It was the pickup truck of Robert, a middle-aged electrician with calloused hands and a heart as big as Texas, driving home after a grueling 12-hour shift. Robert was driving cautiously, singing an old gospel hymn to keep himself awake, when he spotted that golden, motionless lump in the middle of the lane. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a trash bag, it was a dog, a 4-legged angel lying like a sacrifice on the altar of human indifference. Robert slammed on the brakes, tires screeching on the wet asphalt, the vehicle coming to a halt just yards from Daisy's lifeless body. The silence that followed, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of rain on the metal roof, was heavy with tension. For a moment the man feared the worst, that it was already too late, that this creature had already flown away. But then he saw movement, a slight lifting of the head. Daisy had seen the light, and with a superhuman effort that defied all medical logic, she tried to stand. Her paws slipped, her broken leg gave way, and she collapsed again, letting out a whimper that would break the heart of the devil himself. The man didn't hesitate for a second. Ignoring the torrential downpour and the danger of oncoming traffic, he threw his door open and stepped out into the flood. Robert, with his yellow raincoat flapping in the wind, approached slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice so as not to spook her. "Hey there, girl. It's okay, I'm here for you," he whispered, kneeling in the dirty water. Daisy didn't growl, didn't show her teeth. Instead, she did something that made tears mix with the rain on Robert's rough face. She painfully dragged herself toward his boots, resting her snout on the toe of his shoe in an act of total surrender and desperate trust. It was as if she was saying, "Take me, do whatever you want, just save me." It was in that moment, as he stroked the mother's soaked head, that Robert noticed something moving underneath the dog's belly. A tiny pink nose, then another, and another peeked out from the muddy fur. Robert gasped, paralyzed by the discovery. He wasn't just saving a life. There was a whole family under there, protected by the battered body of this heroic mother. The puppies whimpered weakly, starving and terrified, clinging to life with all their might. The scale of the tragedy and the miracle hit Robert like a punch to the gut. God had put him on that road for a specific reason. The situation was critical. Daisy was too heavy and injured to move, the puppies were too small to walk, and the storm was getting worse, turning visibility to absolute zero. Robert knew every second counted. Another vehicle could appear out of nowhere at any moment and turn this rescue into a tragedy. He looked Daisy in the eyes that now shone with a spark of hope, and made her a solemn promise. None of you are getting left behind tonight. I swear it on everything I hold dear. It was the beginning of an impossible mission, a fight against time and nature. This is the moment of truth, friends. Look at this mother's eyes. She endured hell just to give her babies a chance. She is a fallen angel who needs our prayers to survive the night. If your heart is beating fast for Daisy and her little ones, please subscribe to the channel and leave a prayer in the comments. Your positive energy can make the difference between life and death. God bless anyone who loves and respects animals. Now let's pray Robert can get them off that cursed road. The rain was coming down in sheets now, a relentless curtain of water that blurred the line between the road and the ditch. Robert stood there, soaked to the bone, staring at the logistical nightmare before him. Daisy was a large dog, probably weighing 60 pounds, even without the added weight of the water soaking her fur, and her injury was catastrophic. Any wrong move could sever an artery or send her into fatal shock. He knelt closer, the cold mud seeping into his jeans, and extended a trembling hand. "I need to move you, Mama. Please don't bite," he pleaded, his voice cracking against the roar of the thunder. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt and iron, the metallic scent of old blood. He reached out to touch her shoulder, testing her reaction. Daisy flinched violently, her muscles locking up in a spasm of agony. A low, guttural growl vibrated in her throat, not out of malice but out of pure, blinding terror. She was protecting her babies, and every instinct told her that humans were the source of her pain. Robert pulled his hand back slowly, showing her his palms. He knew he couldn't just grab her. If she panicked and tried to run, she would drag her shattered leg on the pavement, causing damage that no vet could fix. He needed a strategy, and he needed it fast, because the highway wasn't going to stay empty forever. Robert realized the key to her heart lay underneath her belly. The puppies were shivering so hard they looked like vibrating fuzzballs, their tiny cries barely audible over the wind. He decided to take a gamble. "I'm going to help your babies first, okay? Watch me." He narrated his actions, moving with exaggerated slowness. He reached for the runt of the litter, a tiny cream-colored male that looked like he was fading fast. Daisy's eyes widened. Her head snapped toward his hand, her teeth bared for a split second. Robert froze. It was a standoff. One wrong move and the mother's protective instinct could turn this rescue into a bloodbath. But Daisy paused. She looked at Robert's face, then at the shivering puppy in his large, rough hand. She saw him tuck the little one inside his warm jacket against his chest. She didn't bite. She understood. With a soft exhale, she lowered her head back onto the asphalt. Robert moved quickly then, shuttling the puppies one by one from the freezing road to the heated cabin of his truck. He placed them on the passenger seat, wrapping them in his dry flannel shirt. Each trip back to the car was a victory, but the hardest part was still waiting on the road. Daisy was watching her family disappear into the truck, and her anxiety was spiking. With the puppies safe, Robert turned his full attention to the mother. He ran back to the truck bed and grabbed a heavy-duty canvas tarp and some straps. He needed a makeshift stretcher, but as he returned to Daisy, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. The distant, low-frequency rumble of a semi-truck engine approaching from the east. It was miles away, but closing in fast. The road curved right before this spot. A driver wouldn't see them until it was too late. The clock had just started ticking, and it was a countdown to impact. They were sitting ducks in the middle of a high-speed lane. Robert spread the canvas on the wet road next to Daisy. "Come on, girl. We have to work together," he urged, sweat mixing with the rain on his forehead. He tried to slide his hands under her ribcage to shift her onto the tarp. Daisy screamed, a high-pitched yelp of pure torture that echoed in the night. She snapped at the air, her head thrashing. The pain of Moving her shattered pelvis was too much. She couldn't do it. She went dead weight, pressing herself into the ground, refusing to be moved. It was the point of almost failure. Robert felt a wave of hopelessness wash over him. How could he save someone who couldn't be moved? The headlights of the approaching semi-truck crested the hill in the distance, beaming two distinct eyes of doom toward them. Robert waved his arms frantically, but the rain was too heavy. The driver wouldn't see him. He had maybe 60 seconds. Adrenaline flooded Robert's system, overriding his own exhaustion. "I am not leaving you here to die," he shouted, more to the universe than to the dog. He grabbed a bag of beef jerky from his pocket, his dinner, and ripped it open. The smell of smoked meat cut through the rain. He held it right under Daisy's nose, trying to break through her wall of pain with primal hunger. Daisy's nose twitched. For the first time in days, the survival instinct to eat overpowered the pain. She lifted her head, licking the meat from his fingers. As she chewed, distracted for a fleeting second, Robert made his move. He didn't ask for permission this time. With a grunt of exertion, he grabbed the scruff of her neck and her uninjured hip, and in one fluid, forceful motion, he slid her body onto the canvas tarp. She yelped and tried to bite his arm, her teeth grazing the sleeve of his jacket, but she was on the tarp. He had done it. But the rumble of the truck was now a roar. The arm vibration shaking the ground beneath his boots. Robert grabbed the handles of the tarp and pulled. Daisy was heavy, a dead weight of muscle and wet fur. He dragged her across the asphalt, his boots slipping on the slick oil and mud. He pulled with everything he had, his back muscles screaming in protest. Inch by inch, the golden dog slid toward the safety of the shoulder. Just as he pulled her clear of the white line, the semi-truck thundered past. The gust of wind was so powerful it knocked Robert backward into the mud, and the spray of water completely engulfed them. The horn blasted, a late, angry warning, and then the taillights faded into the night. They were alive, but only just. Breathing heavily, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, Robert crawled over to Daisy. She was shaking uncontrollably, eyes wide with shock. But she wasn't looking at the road anymore. She was looking at him. Robert reached out, his hand trembling, and touched her face. She didn't flinch. She leaned into his palm, closing her eyes, letting out a long, shuddering breath. It was the surrender. The moment the walls came down, she knew he was her guardian angel. "I got you, Mama. The hard part is over," he lied softly, knowing the battle for her leg was just beginning. Getting her into the truck was a feat of strength. Robert lifted the entire bundle, tarp and dog, into his arms, groaning under the strain. He carefully placed her on the floor of the passenger side, right beneath the heater vents. The moment the warm air hit her, Daisy's body seemed to melt. She looked up and saw her 6 puppies sleeping in a pile on the seat above her. She let out a soft whine and nudged Robert's hand with her nose, a silent thank you that was worth more than $1 million. Robert slammed the door shut, sealing out the storm, the cold, and the death that had stalked them. Inside the cab, the atmosphere changed instantly. The silence was heavy, broken only by the heater fan, and the soft breathing of the animals. Robert turned on the dome light to assess the damage properly for the first time. What he saw made his stomach turn. The blood on Daisy's leg wasn't just a scrape. The bone was visible, white and jagged against the red muscle. The infection had already started to set in, the smell of rot faint but present. She wasn't out of the woods. In fact, she might not survive the night if septicemia took hold. The nearest emergency vet was 40 miles away. Robert put the truck in gear, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. He looked down at Daisy, who was watching him with eyes that were no longer terrified, but heavy with exhaustion. "Hold on, girl. Don't you dare give up on me now," he whispered. He floored the gas pedal, the tires spinning before catching traction. They were racing against time now. The rescue on the road was finished, but the war for her life was just starting. And Robert knew that even with all his love, he couldn't fix what was broken inside her without professional help. They drove into the night, a man and 7 dogs in a beat-up truck, leaving the scene of the crime behind. But as Daisy finally rested her head on Robert's boot while he drove, a new fear crept in. She was too quiet. Her gums were pale. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of blood loss was setting in. Was this rescue going to end in a heartbreak? Robert prayed not. He reached down to stroke her head, needing to feel her warmth to reassure himself she was still there. She was fading, drifting into a sleep that looked dangerously like a coma. Are you rooting for this angel to pull through? She is safe from the storm, but her life is hanging by a thread. Your like helps us save more lives like Daisy's. Subscribe to support our mission. Now let's see if she survives the night at the hospital. The tires of Robert's truck screeched into the empty parking lot of the 24-hour emergency veterinary clinic. The neon open sign was a beacon of hope in the rainy darkness. Robert didn't bother parking correctly. He abandoned the truck near the entrance, scooped Daisy up in his arms, her body limp and alarmingly hot, and kicked the glass doors open. "Help! I need help here!" His voice cracked, echoing through the sterile white hallway. A team of vet techs, accustomed to late-night tragedies, sprang into action immediately. They didn't see a dirty construction worker holding a muddy stray. They saw a life hanging in the balance. Dr. Emily, a seasoned veterinarian with eyes that had seen too much suffering, took charge. She directed them to a trauma table. As they laid Daisy down under the harsh fluorescent lights, the contrast was heartbreaking. The golden dog looked like a broken doll, her mud-caked fur staining the pristine stainless steel table. "She's in hypovolemic shock. Gums are white. We're losing her pressure," Dr. Emily barked out commands, inserting an IV line with practiced precision. Robert stood in the corner, dripping wet, clutching his hat, feeling utterly useless. He watched as they cut away the fur around her leg, revealing the full horror of the injury. The initial assessment was a punch to the gut. The X-rays lit up the screen, showing a roadmap of disaster. Daisy's femur wasn't just broken, it was shattered into fragments, and the infection from the open wound had entered her bloodstream. "It's bad, Robert," Dr. Emily said, her voice soft but grave. "Ideally, we'd stabilize her for a day, but she doesn't have a day. The sepsis is spreading. We have to operate now or she won't wake up." She paused, looking at the man's worn-out clothes. "This is going to be expensive, and there's no guarantee she'll survive the anesthesia." Robert didn't blink. He reached into his soaked wallet and pulled out a credit card, his savings for a new work van. "Do whatever it takes, Doc. She didn't fight this hard just to die on a table. Save her." With the paperwork signed, the team wheeled Daisy away toward the surgery suite. As the double doors swung shut, Daisy lifted her head one last time, her eyes locking onto Robert's. It was a look of pure terror and confusion, as if asking, "Where are you going? Don't leave me." The doors clicked shut, severing their connection. Robert collapsed onto a plastic chair, putting his head in his hands. While Daisy fought for her life in the operating room, the clinic staff tended to the 6 puppies. They were examined, bathed, and fed warm formula. Miraculously, apart from being malnourished and flea-ridden, they were healthy. Their mother had absorbed every blow, every shiver of cold, every ounce of pain to keep them safe. Seeing the puppies clean and sleeping in a warm incubator, their bellies full, only deepened the tragedy of what was happening in the other room. If Daisy died tonight, these little ones would never know the hero who sacrificed everything for them. The waiting room clock ticked. With agonizing slowness, 1 hour passed, then 2. The silence was heavy, thick with the unsaid fear that bad news was walking down the hall. Inside the operating room, the battle was intense. Daisy's blood pressure bottomed out twice. The beep of the heart monitor, usually a steady rhythm, became erratic. "She's crashing, push epi now." Dr. Emily's voice was tight. The team worked frantically, fighting to keep the spirit of this golden dog tethered to her broken body. For a terrifying minute, the room went silent as the monitor flatlined, a single high-pitched tone of death. "Come on, Daisy, don't you dare." Dr. Emily performed chest compressions, her own heart racing. Then, a miracle. Beep. A pause. Beep. The rhythm returned, weak but present. The invisible villain of death had been fought back inch by inch. They finished the reconstruction of her leg, inserting plates and screws to hold the bone together, and flushed the infection from her system. It was a surgical masterpiece, but the trauma to her body was immense. She was alive, but she was deep in the woods, floating in the dark void of anesthesia. When Dr. Emily finally emerged into the waiting room, she looked exhausted. Her surgical scrubs were stained, and she pulled off her cap with a sigh. Robert stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "Did she make it?" he choked out. The vet offered a tired smile. "She's a fighter, Robert. I've never seen a heart that stubborn." She's out of surgery, but the next 24 hours are critical. If she makes it through the night without the infection spiking, she has a chance. Robert let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for hours. "Can I see her?" They led him to the ICU kennels. Daisy was lying on a heated pad, hooked up to fluids, antibiotics, and pain management pumps. She looked smaller now, shaved and stitched up, a cone around her neck. She was deeply unconscious. Robert approached the cage slowly, afraid that even a noise might shatter her fragility. He reached through the bars and gently stroked her nose. "I'm here, girl. The babies are safe. You did good," he whispered. He pulled up a chair and refused to leave. He would keep vigil. He would be the anchor she needed to find her way back to the waking world. The night dragged on. The storm outside finally broke, leaving a quiet, starry sky. Around 4 a.m., something changed. Daisy's breathing pattern shifted. Her eyelids fluttered. She let out a low, groggy moan. Robert leaned in close. "Daisy?" Her eyes cracked open, drug-hazed and unfocused, but open. She sniffed the air, smelling the antiseptic, but then she smelled Robert. And then the true miracle happened. A faint, rhythmic thump, thump, thump against the bedding. Her tail. She was wagging her tail. Even in her agony, her first instinct was gratitude. But the real test came moments later. A nurse walked by carrying a tray of food for another patient. The smell of wet dog food drifted into the cage. Daisy, who had been on death's door hours ago, lifted her head. Her stomach growled, a loud, healthy sound of life asserting itself. Dr. Emily, passing by on her rounds, stopped and laughed in disbelief. "Well, she's hungry. That's the best sign we could hope for." They offered her a small bowl of recovery food, and she ate it with a delicate dignity, despite her exhaustion. The crisis had passed. The shadow of death had retreated, chased away by the skill of the doctors and the sheer willpower of a mother who refused to leave her children orphans. Robert watched her eat, tears streaming freely down his face now. He took a photo of her eating and sent it to his wife with the caption, "She's going to make it." The reply came back instantly, "Bring them all home when she's ready. We have plenty of room." As the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow through the clinic windows that matched Daisy's coat, the nurse brought the box of puppies into the room. They couldn't nurse yet due to the meds, but they could be near her. Robert held the box up to the cage. Daisy let out a soft bark, her eyes bright and alert for the first time. She pressed her nose against the wire, sniffing her babies. The family was whole again. The broken leg would heal, the scars would fade, but the bond formed in this room would last forever. Daisy was no longer a victim of the road. She was a survivor. But the journey wasn't over yet. She was safe, yes, but she was a shadow of the magnificent dog she was meant to. As she was skinny, patchy, and weak, now began the road to recovery. The transformation from a broken stray into the queen she was born to be. The hard part was over. The beautiful part was about to begin. She fought death and won. Daisy is alive thanks to the vets and Robert's love. But look at her. She has a long road to recovery. If you are crying happy tears, hit that like button. Let's show Daisy how much she is loved. Now get ready for the most beautiful transformation you have ever seen. Time is the best healer, and 6 weeks later, the day everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. It was time for the glow-up. Daisy was no longer the trembling, muddy skeleton found on that highway. Her surgery scars had healed into faint lines, and the vet finally gave the green light to remove the cone of shame and the heavy splint on her leg. Robert, now looking less like a tired worker and more like a proud father, lifted her into the backyard tub for her first real spa day. It wasn't just a bath, it was a baptism. As the warm water and oatmeal shampoo lathered up, the last remnants of the dirt, the road oil, and the smell of fear were washed down the drain. When Robert turned on the blow-dryer, the transformation was nothing short of magical. The dull, matted fur fluffed up into a brilliant, shimmering gold that caught the Texas sunlight. She didn't look like a stray anymore. She looked like royalty. Daisy seemed to know it too. She stood taller, puffing out her chest, her tail swaying like a metronome set to the rhythm of happiness. She pranced around the yard, lifting her paws high, showing off her new coat to the puppies who were tumbling around in the grass like chaotic little potatoes. The ugly duckling moment was over. The swan had arrived. Speaking of the puppies, they were now 8 weeks old, fat, fluffy, and full of mischief. The backyard had become their personal amusement park. Daisy, once the anxious protector, was now the relaxed supervisor. She lay on the porch in a patch of sun, watching her babies wrestle with Robert's old work boots. Occasionally, she would let out a soft woof to break up a fight, her maternal authority absolute but gentle. It was a scene of pure domestic bliss, a stark contrast to the cold, wet asphalt where their story began. The fear of death had been replaced by the joy of life, but the most emotional moment came when Robert threw a tennis ball across the lawn. For a second, everyone held their breath. Would the leg hold? Daisy didn't hesitate. She didn't just walk, she ran. It wasn't a perfect run. There was a slight, permanent hop to her gait, a battle scar she would carry with pride. But she was fast. She chased the ball, her ears flopping in the wind, a goofy grin plastered on her face. She brought it back to Robert, dropping it at his feet and letting out a playful bark that sounded like pure laughter. The dog who couldn't stand up was now catching air. This was the zoomies of a lifetime. As the weeks turned into months, it became clear that Robert's house was a little too small for 7 full-grown dogs. With a heavy but hopeful heart, Robert and his wife vetted the perfect families for the 6 puppies. One by one, they went to forever homes with huge yards and kids to play with. Daisy didn't mourn them. She seemed to understand. She kissed each one goodbye, trusting that if these new humans were anything like her Robert, her babies would be treated like kings. And she was right. She had done her job as a mother. Now it was time for her to be the baby. Daisy, of course, wasn't going anywhere. She had claimed her spot on the rug at the foot of Robert's bed, and occasionally right in the middle of the bed when she thought he wasn't looking. She became the neighborhood celebrity, the miracle dog who waved her tail at the mailman and waited by the window every evening for Robert's truck to pull into the driveway. The bond between the man and the dog was unbreakable. They had seen the darkness together, and now they were basking in the light. Robert often said that he didn't save Daisy. She saved him from a life that had become too quiet. As for the person who dumped her on that road, they remain a mystery, a shadow in the past. But while they live with the rot of their own cruelty, Daisy lives in a kingdom of love. Karma has a way of working things out. The person who abandoned her lost the most loyal, loving soul on earth, while Robert gained a best friend who looks at him like he hung the moon. The invisible villain lost, kindness won. Daisy's life is now filled with belly rubs, grilled chicken treats, and soft blankets. The storm is over. The sun is out to stay. Moral question. Whoever threw this angel out like trash missed out on the best dog in the world. Do you think they deserve forgiveness, or should they face justice? Tell us in the comments. Emotional command. Leave a like if you believe every animal deserves a second chance at happiness.